Hello again. And if you've listened to the audio from yesterday, you've probably begun to get a hint of just how important it is to accept personal responsibility for your own life, and also how it can sometimes seem like quite a tall order. So after yesterday, trying to encourage you to see how important it is, I want to spend today just reviewing how you're actually creating your models of the world, and how these models of the world and the way you react to them put you squarely in the position of being responsible for your own life. Let's begin by thinking about other people and how they can be so different. Have you ever noticed how other people can be so annoying? But to be honest, some people seem to make no sense. They can entirely miss the point of what you've just said. And sometimes they just seem to be trying to be awkward. To be honest, it sometimes seems that many people live in a very different world to you. Why is this? Why do people behave and think in such bizarre ways? What's really going on? Well, before I explain what's going on, I'd like you to take a moment to think about when you first logged onto this website. My guess is that you had a look around and you saw the pictures of the other people who'd started to sign up. How weird would it have been if everybody on that site had your picture up as well? That's not only the same photo, but the same haircut, the same clothes, in fact the same face. It would be pretty weird, wouldn't it? And you'd probably think you just entered some strange episode of The Twilight Zone. So why is it that we all expect people to think the same way we do, to value the same things, and to agree with us on pretty much everything we say? It's strange when you think about how different we all are, but we seem to expect other people to think like us. The strangest thing about this is that none of us actually live in the real world at all. We all make up our own little versions of reality and then behave as though they're real. We've been doing this for so long that we've actually grown to believe that we're actually responding to the real world. Nothing could be further from the truth. Because this can seem such a strange concept, I'm going to look at it in a few different ways over the next couple of days, so that you can develop a deep understanding of what's really going on and how you're reacting in the world, so that we can use this as a solid foundation to build our further work over the weeks ahead. The first model we're going to look at is the one you've seen before. This is the NLP communication model. NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and it's basically the study of how we create our own unique subjective experience of the world. The NLP communication model is a model used to describe how each individual creates their subjective reality, or in NLP terms, their model of the world. We'll look at another model later to show you how your brain does this, but for now, let's stick with this model. I've already mentioned in earlier sessions that you're exposed to vast amounts of sensory data. Some people say up to 2 million bits of information a second, and if you were to become aware of it, you'd probably go mad. In order to make sense of it, you have to filter it. And your conscious mind can only keep track of 5 to 11 chunks of information at any one time. So you need to reduce it down from something like 2 million bits a second down to 5 to 11 chunks. The three gross processes that you'd use to do this are called deletion, generalization, and distortion. Deletion is when you delete information that just isn't currently important. For example, were you aware of the feeling of your left foot until I brought it to your conscious attention? It also seems that from the field of accelerated learning that much of this information just doesn't actually get to your brain at all. Generalization. You generalize when you take a small amount of data about a specific thing and generalize this to apply to something or someone else. For example, as a child you learn to open a door or two, then generalize the learning to be able to open most doors. You don't have to work out each case separately, and most of us agree that's a good thing. Distortion is the other filtering process. And this is the process where we take in some sensory information and we create something in our minds that isn't really there. For example, lying back on the grass and making faces out of the clouds on a summer day, or waking in the middle of the night, hearing a rattle and mistaking the pile of clothes in the corner for a cat or some other animal. These processes of distortion, generalization and deletion are an essential part of how we operate, and are neither good nor bad. The effect is always dependent on context. For example, generalizing one or two people's perceived behavior can lead to stereotyping and racism, whereas generalizing is also the basis of all learning. The important thing is for us as people who are interested in improving our lives and building better relationships and alliances with others, is to recognize that we are creating and responding to our own model of the world, created by filtering and giving meaning to our sensory input. It's important to remember that you have your own mental model of the world, and so does everyone else. We're all responding not to the world, but to our models or maps, created from our perceptions and internal representations and meanings that we give them. One of the common ways of expressing this is to say, the map is not the territory. What this means is that your internal model of the world is effectively a map you use to navigate through reality. But it is not, and it can never be reality. The best map of the Lake District in the UK is still not the Lake District itself. You can't put your finger in something and get wet, it's just a map. However, if you're lost on a misty day, it can be very useful. And you created your map from the experiences of your life to date. It is very unique to you. The problems begin when we begin to treat our map as though it's reality, and we expect everyone else to have the same map, or else we accept it's a map and still expect everyone to have the same map. This might all sound a little theoretical, but the important point to get for now is that you are not reacting and operating to the outside world, but to your own internal map of reality. And this leads directly into personal responsibility. This is because once you begin to realize that you are reacting to your own model, and the only meaning is the meaning you give whatever happens, you will see how you are actually the creator of what comes into your world, and at some level you are choosing how to respond. Not necessarily consciously, but your response is yours and not anyone else's responsibility. You might like to think of it this way. It's not what someone says, it's how you finish it off in your head and the meaning you give it that actually causes you to be annoyed. If what the person actually said had no sensible meaning to you, then it would just quite simply bounce off. Imagine if you were 6'4" and someone came along and said, "Hey, shorty," it'd just tend to bounce off, as you'd reject it as not making sense. It wouldn't fit your map of the world. But if you were a tall guy and your height really bothered you, and then somebody came into a bar and said, "Hey, Lofty," you might get angry because suddenly this makes sense and fits your map. It hits one of your hot buttons. You might get annoyed with them, but you are reacting to your own meaning and maps. This leads to an empowering couple of frames on which we can learn to view the world. The first is on the screen at the moment, and that's cause and effect. We seem to live in a cause-effect world. It's one where our actions and inactions are a cause set in motion. By adopting the belief that you are the cause of whatever is happening or not happening in your life, you give yourself extra choices. It's worth remembering that the cause may be separated by time, and the fact that you aren't seeing it at the moment just creates a learning horizon, in which case you may not be immediately apparent what the effects of your actions are. So we can come back to that at later points when we get into systems thinking. But for now, I'd like to ask you this question. If it is a cause-effect universe, which side of this equation are you spending your life on? Are you someone who sees yourself at cause and is creating the effects in your life? Or are you choosing to be somewhat at effect, and at the effect of other people's reactions and the news and TV programs? Because if you are, you might like to think about how you can move back towards the cause side of the equation. Because quite simply, this is the very essence of empowerment. By choosing to be on the cause side of the equation, you're empowering yourself to have new choices. Now, I don't know whether you actually are in control of your life or not. I just know that by acting as if you were the cause, you will always give yourself extra choice. So I'm going to encourage you throughout this program to put yourself at cause. If you find yourself reacting to somebody or something, ask yourself, how can I put myself at cause for this? How could I be creating it? How could I choose to do something different? The next frame we're going to look at is perception is projection. This frame comes from Jungian psychology, and it's completely aligned with the communication model. Because once something enters your perception, it is 100% yours. So in actual fact, everything you perceive is a result of your model, because you are filtering everything as it comes in. And then, as you look out back through your eyes, you're actually seeing the world through your own filters, which I'll cover a bit more tomorrow. But this boils down to the lines that we have heard before, that you see the world not as it is, but as you are. Or, it's not seeing as believing, but believing is seeing. You filter the world by putting out your own projections onto the world. So if you see somebody being rude or angry, it's worth just taking a step back and thinking, okay, so how am I interpreting this inside to create this anger? Once again, it may or may not be true, but by choosing this, you actually give yourself extra choices. The final frame I want to introduce at this session is responsibility for results. Once you accept responsibility for the results in your life, a very strange thing happens. You begin to find that people become more helpful. I'm not sure why this is, but I like to think it might be due to the fact that once you accept responsibility, you can still delegate tasks and work in teams, etc. But you tend to be much clearer about the deliverables, checking understanding, and making sure people are happy to help because you can show them how it's a win for them too. It's almost like the more prepared to accept total responsibility for creating the results in life you are, the less you actually have to do because other people will help you. And now each of these frames can be a bit of a stretch at first. So in the note sheets accompanying this, there's a little exercise for you to do for each one as you begin to explore the possibility that you are the creator of your own world, and that puts you squarely in the position of being responsible for your own results.